Alright, so recently Joel Telling, aka the 3D printing nerd, released a video about his first design challenge. And essentially this challenge is to build a spool holder that will go onto his shelving, which serve as spool storage. So what he wants to do, and I'll go ahead and just link the video in over here. I think it's on this side, it might be over here. I'm not sure. But anyway, I'm gonna link in his video. He explains what he wants, but it's basically to be able to hang a spool off of his shelving and use it for the printers that are underneath his shelving. Now the video is not part of the entry, it's not a requirement or anything like that. You basically just need to be able to provide an STL file, I believe, for the website that you upload the file to, which I believe is My Mini Factory. All right, to start this out with, I'm gonna go all the way back to my freshman year of high school, which is where I had a design class. And the first thing when you start to design anything is to set up what are called design constraints. Now these are essentially just what you want the project to be. So we're gonna go ahead and work on that right now. Hello again from a slightly lower angle this time. I figured I'd go ahead and zoom in on the chalkboard so you can kind of see what I'm writing. Now I'm gonna warn you in advance, I have absolutely horrible handwriting, but hopefully you'll still be able to see it and read it. But anyway, starting out with the design constraints. First thing is, it's supposed to be at least relatively simple. Now, one of the things with the word simple is that depending on who you ask, it's gonna be a different answer. So, he never said anything about having to make it in one piece. The idea that I kind of have in my head is gonna be a multiple piece design, but underneath this category of simple, I want it to be fully 3D printed. I would like it to print without supports, not that that necessarily falls underneath the category of simple, I'm gonna put it here anyway. But I just don't like using support material because, well, it's a waste. And if I can get away with not using support, I'm not going to use support. So, and I think lastly for the simple category, I want to make it relatively easy to install. And as Joel mentioned, he wants to be able to install this on his shelving without tearing or taking out any of the filament rolls that are already on the shelves. So that's going to be something that we want to keep in mind later when we're building this thing. Some other important stuff that I want to incorporate here. One is that I want it to work with any 1 kilogram or half a kilogram spool. So essentially what I'm saying is that we need this thing to be versatile. So this fitting any 1 or half a kilogram spool is actually probably going to be one of the harder parts of this because they come in so many different shapes and sizes. I only have a couple to test against, but we'll see what we can come up with. And there is one last thing that I want this to be, and that is I want it to look, wow, that doesn't work very well. Now there is one last thing that I want to add to this, and that is I want it to look decent. Now what do I mean when I say I want it to look decent? Well, it needs to, in my opinion, it should blend in with the shelving brackets that it already has, and I'll put up a picture of what one of those looks like. So we're gonna try to make it look at least kind of like one of the shelving brackets so it blends in with the rest of them. All right, so this is my extremely rough chalkboard sketch as to what this thing's gonna look like. Essentially, we're gonna put Joel's 1x2 in between here. This thing's just gonna slip on over top of it. And then we're going to have kind of an X shape in this. I'm not sure, I may kind of enclose all of it like that and just sort of have an X in the middle or something along those lines. I'm not real sure what I'm gonna do with that. And there's gonna be 2 of these, and they're gonna be about the distance apart as the width of the spool. And then in between them, we're going to design a little, basically just a rod, and we're gonna put a bunch of little marks on it, kind of like this, toward the end. And that way you can use different lengths. This rod will just kind of snap into the slot on the end of this little holder here. And that will serve 2 things. One, you can use different spools, different widths of spools, and 2, you can have these things different widths apart, which is going to allow for this to be able to go on no matter what spools are in the way, because usually you're only going to have the spools, you know, just a little tiny gap where you're not going to be able to put it. And if you made this one fixed distance, there's that really off chance that something will happen where you're hitting 2 spools when you try to put it on. And seeing how many different types of spools that Joel has sitting on those shelves may not be a completely unrealistic possibility. Another thing that this will accomplish, I thought about just using basically a smooth rod with 2 stops on the ends, but that wouldn't be as strong. If I do this, I should actually be able to make it so that it doesn't twist so much. And the sort of plan with the rod, by the way, is to have the end of it look kind of like a D shape. So it'll go like that. And then this flat part will be the part that gets put down when it gets printed. And then the actual rod part of it will only be, you know, this size. And then this outer piece is going to be what holds the rod in place and keeps it from moving back and forth. And that's what all of these little marks are going to be going down that. So that makes it relatively adjustable. Now, in coming up with this idea, I kind of took a bit of inspiration from my filament holder, which is kind of, well, it's clear, so you kind of can't see it too well. But anyway, it follows the same sort of principles-ish. It has this rod, which is like M8 threaded rod. It's got a couple of lock nuts on the end of it. And basically you put your filament spool through this thing, and then this just slides or slips into this guy. Now, I haven't personally come across a spool that wouldn't fit into this holder, though it's not particularly wide. It's wide enough for all the spools that I have, but I could see, you know, possibly this not fitting certain spools. Now, I always consider this thing to be pretty simple. It's just, you know, laser cut acrylic screwed together and then this one piece of hardware. But my goal, of course, is to make it fully 3D printed and to make it go onto a shelf instead of this is obviously meant to sit on a tabletop. But anyway, I think the next step is to go ahead and jump into Fusion 360 and start designing this thing in CAD. Okay, so I've got a couple of rolls of filament ready to go, and I've got the calipers here so we can make some guesstimates as to what I need to be able to do. Alright, so we're going to start off with what is more than likely going to be the most basic part of this. And that's going to be the part for what goes over the lumber. So he says he has 1x2 lumber, which in reality is going to be more like 1.5 by 3/4, because that's how we do it in America. I'm not sure, is that a thing in other countries too? Like with lumber, is it not actually the size that they say it is? Usually the only size that's right is the length. But anyway, we're gonna basically have something like that on the end, which is going to be what we use to so we're basically gonna have something like that on the end, and that's just going to be able to slide onto the 1x4. You go ahead and dimension this because I think it's off by a little bit. Yes, it is. We want this 0.75 exactly. Now, I don't know what the exact size of these boards are. He just said they should be 3/4 by 1.5. So we're going to make the gap 3/4. If it's a little bit off, you can scale all the parts up or down by a little bit, and that should fix the issue if it doesn't fit quite right. I'm thinking 1/4 inch of plastic around this should be more than enough strength. So I'm basically just going to offset this by 1/4 inch. And that's what's going to be our strength in this part. So that's the part that's going to go around the wood. And now I need to figure out how far out I need the part that's going to contain the spool. So I've got a couple different spools, a couple different sizes. Now, one thing you do have to kind of keep in mind here is that the spool is going to be in the middle. Let's see how ridiculous this would look if we went for, say, 5.5 inches out. We'll just go for 6. Made it 6 inches like that. That's probably not too bad. And I'll just make this, say, 1/2 inch. I'm not real sure what I want to do. I don't think that actually worked when I did that. And I'm just going to go ahead and draw in lines like so. So I'm going to make a line from here to here that's going to be 1/4 inch, which we're kind of just hoping is going to be enough strength to hold the filament. Then again, it's only, what, 2-3 pounds at most. It's not going to be too big of a deal. And then in this area, this is going to be the part that actually holds the filaments. Actually, for a little bit of consistency here, let's make this part be 3/4 inch. So we're going to go 0.75 like so, and I'm going to go 0.75 down. 0.75 is right there, and that makes a little square. We might actually, that makes a little square there. We may be better off if we just made this whole thing a solid piece. And then of course from here down we want 1/4 of an inch. That's going to be our support like so. And then we need to be able to draw in the X's like this. Now I will say there's probably better ways of doing this, but I'm just going to go ahead and take the line tool, put a couple of random lines in here that kind of look like they're parallel, and then we're going to come over to the sketch palette. We're going to go parallel, make this and this parallel, and we're going to make this and this parallel. I'm going to make the dimension between here and here. I'm going to make this 0.125. And then I'm going to take another dimension and go between here and here. We're going to make that one 0.125 as well, so that makes the overall thickness of that entire thing 0.25. Apparently I put 124 in that, I want 125. Alright, there we go. And then we draw 2 more lines that look somewhat close, doesn't really matter at this point. Make this and this parallel, and then make this and this parallel. Then take the dimension tool, which I'm getting to by hitting the D key on the keyboard. 0.125, and then 0.125 between these two. Just like so. So now we have this crazy looking mess. We're going to go ahead and attempt to extrude all the parts of it. I could probably trim out a bunch of these lines and make them construction lines and things like that, but I think I can make it work without doing that. Now, the next question is, how thick do we need the thing to be? Now, our next question is, how thick do we need it to be? So I'm thinking we could get away with as little as probably 1/2 inch. But since I keep saying, 3/4, I think we're gonna go ahead and go 0.75. And that should work out fairly nicely. And there we have our extremely basic version of our first piece of the spool holder. And now what I'm going to do is we're going to draw another sketch on here. And we have to find the center of the of this right here. So I'm just going to draw a line all the way down. And I'm thinking we're going to make a slot that's about 1/2 inch. So I want to go 0.25 on either side of this, which is going to leave me with 1/8 of an inch on the side. That should be enough. And if it's not enough, we can add more to it. No big deal. And when I do this slot, I'm actually going to make it not necessarily keyed, but we're going to make it go down a little bit before we put the circle on it. So we're just going to make this one even with this one, which was 0.15. I'll draw another line from this side, which is going to be 0.25. And we'll come down here, line that up. I'm going to trim out the line that I don't need anymore, which is going to be this whole top piece, really. And then I'm going to dimension this part. This should be 1/2 inch. That's good. It just seems off. And I don't know what that's from. I'll delete that. Now this means that the diameter of the circle that I'm going to put on here is going to be 1/2 inch, which I think means I want to take these down by probably 1/4. So it'll be the radius of the circle. I'm not the most experienced at doing this, but I kind of know how to design stuff. So we're going to go ahead and make a circle. We're going to line it up with these guys, and we're just going to extend that out like so. And now we're going to take E for extrude, cut these parts out, and we'll go negative. It was 0.75, so I'll just go ahead and put in like negative 0.8, and that should cut it all the way through. And that makes our slot. Now, I will say I don't really like the way that this looks right now. I think I am going to go ahead and add a bit more meat back onto this. So if I go out by another 0.125, and we'll extrude that and make it the same depth as this guy here. I want it to be 0.75, so we'll put that in. Well, negative 0.75, I suppose. Now, right now, I don't particularly like the looks of how this is, where that's really thin, but I think if we use the tools of our CAD package here, we should be able to make that look pretty decent. So if I do that, that's a 0.3 inch fillet. That doesn't look too bad at all. And really the number one reason why I like to put fillets and things like this is because it does add a decent bit of strength to your parts. Now it does more good in certain instances depending on which axis you're printing on and where your layer lines are. In this case, the way that I'm planning to print this may not improve the strength by too much, but it should make it look better at the very least. So that is just a very slight fillet there. I like the looks of that, so we'll go ahead and commit to it. Put some more fillets on here. Gonna make all of these the same, and we're probably gonna completely round that guy off there. So that's 0.1. We should be able to do 0.125 on this. Yep, we'll just go ahead and go with that. 0.25 ought to be just fine. And I don't know what I want to do with this. I probably want to do both sides of this. 0.125. Whoops, that's not right. 0.125 too much. 0.12, we'll go with that. Should work just fine. And I don't want to put too much of a fillet on this because that might hinder the way that it goes onto the wood. So we're just going to put 0.05 there. And then this we should be able to do like 0.15 pretty safely. And as a last little touch here, I normally do this on my parts because I don't have a removable print bed and it makes it easier to get underneath them. Doesn't really help the quality too much because you're printing an overhang if you do this, but if I put like a 0.05 fillet on the entire thing like so, I tend to do that just because I can get the prints off a little bit easier, but it tends to make it look a little bit nicer too. It's a little bit harder to print because these fillets on the bottom aren't as nice, and sometimes it messes with the way that the part looks down there. But I'm thinking that should work pretty well. It should be a very sturdy part. So our total length is 7.375 inches, which should be just fine. I could print that on my machine, which I think it just barely fit on my machine, but it would work. So that should be able to be printed on like a Prusa or anything like that. So I think that's okay. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here. We're going to right click on body one. I'm going to click on move copy. We're going to create a copy. And then we're going to move said copy. Now as for distance between these, we're probably going to want to go with the widest spool that I can find around here, which is this guy. Now I can always move these and modify stuff later, but I'm thinking if we went for, now I think if we go for about 4.5 inches, that should be able to accommodate pretty much any spool you're going to come across. So by now you're probably getting the idea as to what I'm going to do with these. Essentially we're going to put, I might actually put a stand-in 1x4 in this as well. Yeah, let's go ahead and let's do that. Let's make a, now I'll do that at the end. We'll wait. Alright, so the next step is to make the piece that goes between here and here. So this shouldn't be too hard. Go ahead and make sketch. I don't know why that flipped it upside down. Now the thing that I'm going to have to be the most careful about is not covering up my beautiful fillet work over here. So I'm thinking we can make this, well, let's make it 0.75. We're going for 3/4 on everything else. So 0.75 should work just fine, I think. I am going to take a measurement on that though real quick, so let me get that. All right, so I just went and measured one of my narrowest spools in terms of this inside diameter of the spool, and it's about 0.8 or so. So it's going to be kind of tight if I make this 0.75 on that specific spool. The thing is that spool is meant to go inside of a Dremel Idea builder. It's not really meant to be used in other machines. So I'm not too concerned about this. But anyway, we're going to go ahead and continue drawing lines here. Then the next thing I'm going to do is more or less trace out this inside curve. I might be able to do an offset on it, but it's not going to take much to trace it, so we're just going to go ahead and do this. And actually I will put a bit of an offset on the thing that I just traced, and the reason why I'm going to put an offset on this is just to allow for a bit of tolerance when this gets 3D printed. So I'm going to go 0.01. That's usually about perfect for my printer, so that should work relatively well. And then we've got a few different things that need to be extruded. For one, we need this piece. And then this guy, this is going to go all the way back. So that'll line up just like so. And that makes that whole thing, nope, a little bit further. About right there. So that'll make that whole thing 5.25 inches, which should be, again, perfectly printable. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back into that sketch that I just had, which is going to flip itself and rotate in weird directions. And I'm going to go back to the extrude command, which I'm just hitting E on the keyboard for that. And we are going to select all of this stuff, like so. And I think I'm going to go 0.1 for this. It shouldn't need to be all that thick, but we'll see what that looks like. 0.1, yep. And I want to extrude everything in that actually, just like so. And I'm actually going to go for, we're going to go 2 sides, and what I'm going to do, I'm going to take this side, I'm going to take it in by minus 0.01, and the other side is going to be 0.11, and that'll make it 1/10 of an inch thick, and it will leave, and that'll leave just a bit of a gap between the new part and this other part here, and that'll allow for a bit of tolerance. And also we can, or should be able to, take this part and join it with this part. It may not join automatically, but that's okay because I don't want it to join automatically just yet. Now, I take body number 4, which for some reason is on top of body number 3. We're going to click on Move Copy. We're going to create a copy. Move it down to the other side of this, which I think I want 0.087. That should give it just a little bit of a gap. Hit enter on that. Do it again. Create a copy. And it should be, I think it should be 0.087 every time. Should be anyway, 0.087. Or sorry, 0.87, not 0.087. And I'll just check that real quick. Our distance from here to here should be just a bit over 3/4. Yep, 0.77, that's exactly what I want. Body number 4 again, move copy. This one's going to go all the way, whoops. Body number 4 again, we're going to move copy, create a copy. And this one I'm going to shove all the way to the other side. So this one should be 0.537, I think. Yep. Then I'll do the same thing that I did over here with the push-pull, which is Q. You could probably use extrude as well for this. But we'll just pull that out by 0.1 if we can. There we go. And we'll take body number 7, which is the one that we just created. Move copy, create a copy. Move it back. Should still be 0.087. Body number 8. Move copy, create a copy. And we'll go over by 0.087 again. It should give it just about the right tolerance, I think. All right, so with that done, that should allow for everything to be really sturdy, and you have two positions where you can put these guys. So they can be kind of in this area here, or you can have them moved over a little bit further. So they can kind of be in like that, or they can be all the way out. So that should make a at least reasonably versatile setup for this. Now, doing it like this has one potential drawback, and that is the fact that you only have two spots. This might be a little bit more of a pain to stick on the shelf and have it line up. Though it should also be, because of the way that this is set up, it should be really sturdy. Now, there is one more thing that I need to do to this, and that would be to combine a bunch of bodies. So we're going to combine this to this piece, hit OK. Combine this to this, OK. It needs to be a shortcut to this, really. Combine this to this. I don't think I can do more than one. Maybe I can. I can do all of them at once. Never mind. There we go. So we can combine all those pieces. So now this should be one solid part. Oh, I missed one. Combine that to that. Say OK. Now we have 3 parts. So that's what we wanted. And we'll make this just a little bit prettier, I think, if we can. Maybe. Also, I should be able to fill it. Let's go ahead and do this real quick. If I get rid of body 1 and body 2, we'll fill it the insides of these just a little bit. To make it a little bit smoother. Basically, every time you fill it something, it makes it just that little bit easier to 3D print, because of course the nozzle on the printer is round. So that nozzle kind of has a hard time creating a perfectly square, a perfectly straight square line like that. So we do this, we say probably 0.05, just like that. That should help out a little bit. And we can also do these ones a little bit, I think. Hopefully it'll let me do these ones. Just a hair. 0.05, just like that. So that's looking pretty nice. One concern is this part gets really thin, so let's see if we can fill it that. I might not even be able to. Oh yeah, I can. We'll make that 0.05 as well and see what it looks like. Actually, let's not go 0.05 on that. That's too much. I think 0.025 was okay. Yeah, I think that should work, and it should print okay. It may not print the greatest, but it should be good enough for a filament holder. Alright, so I just realized something here. I messed this up pretty big time. Whenever I move these, I forgot that the reference points that it goes by is not the distance between them, it's something else that's really weird. But anyway, these are more like 3.8 inches apart. I want them to be like 4.5. 3.8 is not going to be enough. I actually almost want them to be like 5 inches. Let's see where my other spool is. Yeah, 4.5 would be plenty. 3.8 is actually probably enough. Yeah, 3.8 would work, but I want to go up by a little bit more than that. So we're going to go ahead and just whiten it up a little bit. It's not that big of a deal. And what we should be able to do here is, first off, let me get that measurement from the right points. I need to go from this line to this line. That's not a line, this is a line. There you go. So these are 3.75 inches apart. If we want to get them up to 4.5, we need to up that by 3/4 of an inch. which means if we wanted to, we could probably go ahead and add in another set of these guys. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take this guy, we're going to move it over by 0.75. 0.75, that's going to put that right there. And that should make it a little bit wider and a little bit more reasonable looking proportion-wise. And then I'm going to do the quick and dirty approach on these things. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to say construct a midplane. We're going to go between here and here. It's going to put a plane right in the middle of that thing. And then we are going to go modify, split body, this body on this plane. And then we can take body number 11 here, move copy. Then we can slide this over by 0.75. Just like so. Now from the looks of this, I could actually add one more point of adjustability to it. So let's see if we can't do that. Shouldn't be too difficult. I think all I'm going to have to do really is slice out one of these pieces and slide it along pretty much just like I did before. So that's going to involve planes. So we're going to put one plane right on the edge of this line like so. And then I'm going to take another one of those planes. And I'm going to put it right there. So that should work just fine, and we need to cut that piece out. And in order to cut the piece out, we use the split body feature. We're going to split this body along. I don't know if I can select both planes at once. Doesn't look like it. So we're going to have to do that twice. Modify, split body. This one on here. And then one of these should be, yep, that one right there. And we should be able to do the same thing we did before, more or less, which would be move copy, create a copy. And I don't think it's actually going to be the same 0.87, but we're going to try 0.87. And then what we have to do is measure between here and here and see how far off we are. Oh, no, that's right, 0.77. That's exactly what I want it to do. So hit enter on that. Now, this other one's going to be a bit trickier. So if we go move copy on this guy, so we want to move this body, create a copy. And I don't want to cut the one out over here because that takes time. So what I'm going to do is just line this up in the same sort of orientation. We're 1.77 inches, so we're going to take that. And since it's negative, I'm going to add 0.87 to it. Not 97, 87. Like so. And if I measure between this and this, 0.77. Alrighty. I should just be able to extrude this. Yep. And we'll extrude that right into that, like so. So if we extrude that into that, that's 0.7. That should be, actually that looks quite a bit nicer that way as well. So the last thing I need to do is go modify, combine again. We're going to make this piece, one with this piece, one with that piece, one with that piece, and part of that piece. So that should make all of those into one thing. And now we're back down to just having 3 bodies again. So that makes, or I think that should make a fairly nice spool holder. Obviously it hasn't been tested yet. But the next thing we need to do is make this look really pretty because we have to make it, you know, presentable or whatever. All right, so the next thing we're gonna do, we are going to create a sketch on this, and I'm just gonna put in something that kind of represents the piece of wood. So that's gonna be about like that. We're gonna extrude that. And we'll go for, make it stick out 2 inches on either side, so we'll go 0.8 or 8 inches even. Negative 8 inches, I meant. -8, and I'm gonna change it to 2 sides, and the second side we're gonna make that 2 inches. Just like, or maybe it needs to be negative as well. This might not be necessary, but our next step is to make this thing look nice and pretty here. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna go underneath that appearance menu, which is right here. And I'm gonna go down to plastic. I don't think it has like a specific, this says white ABS up here, which is the default, but these just say plastic glossy and plastic matte. Generally speaking, with 3D printing, you're gonna have plastic matte, and this is blue. And actually, we're going to just drag this on everything. Oops, I didn't want to drag that onto the wood, but that's okay. I'll fix that in a minute. And I'm going to click on edit, and we're going to make this look, let's say, we'll just go like that, because that kind of sort of looks like Joel's own High Five Blue. So we're going to go ahead and go with that. And then this other thing, this other piece, we're going to come down to wood, maybe, and then unfinished. And I'm pretty sure that those boards are just pine, so we'll make that a piece of pine wood. And hopefully that makes sense as to how this works, how it gets put together. All right, so I think if I go underneath lighting, get rid of the ground plane, that'll take out the shadow there. And we can change the brightness and random stuff like that. This kind of reminds me of using Blender, which I was never very good at using Blender. I don't know, 1,000, it looks decent on the defaults. It almost needs to be just a hair brighter, I think. So we're gonna make it like that. I don't want the ground plane, so that should be pretty good. And we're gonna click on the render button. Need to save my design. Of course I do. All right, here we go. Image size, I'm gonna make this, let's just go for 4K. So we'll make it 3840 by 20. Oops. By 2160. The custom size, we'll make it PNG. I am going to put a transparent background in it. I'm going to make it final quality. Cloud credits. I have an unlimited available amount of credits. I just can't go above 16 per request. But now I could do this in the cloud and let it render, let their servers render it. And supposedly it'd take less than 20 minutes, but you know what? If I do it locally, I bet it takes like 5 minutes. So I'm just gonna render it out locally, let my little computer figure out what it wants to do here. I should have enough CPU power. Looks like it's just using the CPU. But I should have enough power here to render it, and it shouldn't take too long. All right, so I went ahead and saved our render here. If you don't know how to save it, you can just click on this, and it'll eventually load in this rendering gallery thing. This only took about 3 minutes to render out, by the way, so probably a lot quicker than letting them do it on their servers. Well, at least on my computer it is. So that looks like a fairly nice render. Transparent background, so I can just put it on top of whatever I want to. And hopefully this, yep. So that's what it looks like once this opens up, and in order to save it, you click on this button, and it will just ask you where you want to put it. So that's about it. We only have one more thing to do, and that would be to go ahead and... All right, so last step is to save these things as STLs. Hopefully it doesn't crash. There it is, I think. It's showing the mesh. It's not showing the option to save it, but it's showing the mesh. Oh boy. Why is it like transparent now? You gotta love Autodesk software, don't you? Can I still click on it? Still click on it. course, this is the part that I screwed with a bunch of times, so that's probably why it's not particularly happy. Not responding. Let's close the program then. I'm all set with the latest update now. Maybe it won't crash if I try to open that again. All right, now that I have the latest update, let's see if this will work. Looks like it's going to. What if I click on Preview Mesh? Maybe that's what crashes it, the Preview Mesh button. It must be. No, it went that time. There we go. Let's say okay to that. All right, the last thing I'm going to show is how this thing can get printed. So let's see, 3D files. We're going to import this guy. And for whatever reason, this software doesn't recognize that the file's in inches, so you have to scale it up by 25.4. Not a big deal, but that's what that looks like. This just barely fits on my printer, as you can see. We're going to rotate that to lay it flat. And you need 2 of these parts, so there's only 2 files, but you need to print 2 of these and then 1 of the other piece, as you could probably guess by the rendering that I showed. And we'll load the last piece in. Changes by date modified. I don't even know where that went. So this is the same thing. I'm going to have to up it by 25.4 to convert the inches to millimeters that this thing is trying to read. And then we'll rotate it on the z-axis, like so, and we can print that like right there. So we should be able to print that, no worries, without supports. Looks like it would work just fine. Now I'm not going to print it because I don't really have a use for this. I don't have his shelves. I would put those kind of shelves up because I do like the design of it, but I really don't have that much filament, so I don't really see the point in doing it. But anyhow, that should print nicely. Should work pretty well. All right, as for slicing this thing, I would recommend probably 15 to 20% infill. You shouldn't need a whole lot. I usually print with 3 shells at 0.2 millimeter layer height. Not going to need support for these. Shouldn't need it anyway. And we'll go ahead and slice this just to get a rough idea as to how much plastic and time this will take, because I'm kind of curious. Looks like about an 8-hour print, which in reality is probably going to be more like a 10-hour print because these times are always low with Repetier Host, I've noticed. But 40 meters worth of plastic, that's not too bad. It's more than I was expecting, honestly, but that's not too bad. It's not too big of a deal. So anyway, that's what it would look like sliced. Let's just take a single layer. Yeah, that would work just fine, I believe. Now, I will say, normally I wouldn't go through all the things with the design constraints and all that if I'm just doing a project for myself and I already have a really good idea as to what I want to do. And in that case, I just jump straight to Fusion 360 and start modeling it. I've done that before on this channel. It's usually worked out for me, but when it's for a competition or if it's, somebody else's project, you kind of have to go through and realize what they want and what it needs to accomplish. Now, of course, here we're also trying to make it stand out because it's a competition. Not sure how many people are going to end up entering it. It goes until, I think, the 18th of August, so a whole nother month, essentially, to get this done. But anyhow, that's what my design is. Let me go ahead and get that sent off. If you like this video, click on that like button. If you didn't like the video, click the dislike button. If you have any comments on how I did this, you can leave those. But also be easy on me. I'm not an expert in Fusion 360. If any of you guys decide to join this contest, maybe consider making a video about it. And if you do, you can leave that in the comments of this video as well. I'd love to see it. But anyway, that's about it for now, guys. Bye.